Welcome to Life Brand Management Podcast with your girl, BC Starks, aka Brittany. Hey, I'm back with episode 9. I'm so proud of myself, guys. I'm so proud of myself because I keep showing up here. And that is what consistency does. That's what it looks like. Now, granted, I'm not on here every day, but since I launched this podcast back in November, I've been pretty consistent to put out either 2 or more podcasts per week. And so that is pretty dope. Pretty dope. I'm proud of me. And I'm glad that you are here listening and that you are tuned in. So I wanted to hop on today because I've been working with a particular tool. I like to call it a tool. You know, one might call it a technique when it comes to aligning with desired realities rather than acting from memories of the past. And I'm going to put this into context. So you guys know on my podcast, just my entire brand, I talk a lot about manifestation. I feel like today, a lot of that, the word has become cliche, but the fact of the matter is we are intentional creators, right? Those of us that are running into this information maybe for the first time versus those of us who are very well seasoned with concepts like law of attraction and, you know, our ability to create things from our imagination and make manifest things that we vision or dream about, wherever you fall on the spectrum. At the end of the day, once you run into this information, I truly believe that is when we get our initiation into being an intentional creator. And yes, this is a shameless plug. I just dropped my intentional creation course on December 22nd. And for the rest of the year, which we got a couple more days left, I dropped the course for $222. You can also split pay, meaning you can pay in two different transactions for those who may need a little break after the holiday season. But I did that course because ultimately my journey has taught me that you are the sum of the stories you tell, right? And instead of telling the stories from a space of, you know, this is just who I am, this is what it is, tell it from a space of having gained the wisdom from your journey, right? But also understanding your power as a creator along the way. You are not just a victim unless you say you are. Life is not just happening to you. You are playing a part whether you're conscious of it or not. And the more you dive into these topics of manifestation or quantum parallel realities, and trust me, it goes deep and you can find yourself in a rabbit hole. But for me personally, no matter how much information is out there, I like to draw back. Even though I'll dabble and find out information, I'll draw back and just work with a few concepts, because truly the human brain can only handle so much at a time, and you don't want to create overwhelm for yourself. So for me, I found that the best thing to do is to find 2 or 3, maybe even 1. If you find 1, 2, maybe 3, the max, concepts that you work with, that you just show up consistently with. And the reason I prefer like the 3, up to 3 maybe, is because I'm a true Aquarius and we don't like to be put in boxes. We like to have options. So it just gives me options that when I'm working with something, that I could rotate different tools and techniques that I use. But yes, so I as we dive into these topics, pick 1, 2, maybe 3 that you really stick with and start to demonstrate, because that is the era we are in. We are in an era of demonstration. And when I say era, I mean for all of humanity. We've lived in civilization for thousands of years, putting things in theory, doing research, creating sciences around things from research and gathering of information, right? And those who are in the field doing those things, those are the people who have been demonstrating in order to give us the feedback. right? Give the masses the feedback, and the masses just consumed the information and said, okay, this is scientifically proven. This is the results that they got, so it must be true. And we just consumed it based off of hearsay. But very rarely did you get the masses to actually just, instead of just saying, okay, this is hearsay, actually take the concept and demonstrate it for yourself. That is the era we are in. That is the era we are in. We are in that era because of the information explosion that happened with social media and technology, right? Like, okay, if we were thirsty for knowledge, we gathered it enough to include or develop our knowledge of AI and technology. And then once we got to that phase, it was like, okay, well, now that we have that, there's an explosion of information. You can find Google anything. You can go on YouTube. Somebody's talking about some of everything. And so with that can come overwhelm. You can become very overwhelmed, and you can start to drift and maybe even find yourself in a place where you don't know what to believe. But for me, I just understand that there's always the gift of choice. And that's one of the superpowers that we have as human beings, that the divine creator created us in a way that it gave us choice. And so if you are one of those people that may be feeling overwhelmed, I charge you with just pick one, pick something and make that your thing to demonstrate. Okay. Pick that one thing and make it your thing to demonstrate and prove yourself right with whatever that one thing is. And that'll help alleviate some of the pressures of the overwhelm of too much information being out and about. You can literally just dwindle it down to one or two things, stick to it, make it your thing, demonstrate it, and live by it, and make it your thing. And then if that doesn't work out for you, guess what? You got your superpower. It's called the power of choice. Make another one. It's just that simple. And so I say all that to say, we are intentional creators. And so as we are in this era, part of what I've been charged to do is bring out or speak more about my journey with these concepts. Talk about my processes and my journey with these concepts. And also as I'm learning and growing in my understanding of these concepts, in my demonstration of these concepts. Because again, it's not enough to read a million and one books. Knowledge is not power. It does absolutely nothing for you if you do nothing with it. Okay. Knowledge is only as powerful as the time, effort, and energy you put into demonstrating that knowledge. That's it. Otherwise, it has absolutely no power. And so I said all of that to say that, yes, that's my course information. But the main part of this podcast is to be about one of the tools that I've been using along my journey. And that tool is the tool of inner conversations. Now, this was something that I learned about through Neville Goddard. And of course, there's tons of YouTube videos that you can find where people are talking about it. But for me, I've literally, I'm not just using it, or I didn't just hear about it, I'm using it, right? I find myself using this tool as of late. Oh, excuse me, guys. A little dry throat. But I find myself using this technique as of late because what I've come to realize as true, having learned from Neville about inner conversations, is that we are constantly having inner dialogue with the people in our lives throughout the day. We are, and it's not just with the people in our lives, we're also having dialogue around and with certain subjects in our lives. And that's happening on autopilot. And so what Neville says is, our physical world is a reflection of our inner assumptions and inner conversations. And, on surface, it's like, what? Like, what are you even talking about, right? But you guys have had moments, everybody has had a moment or two that they can recall where they were thinking something and then somebody said what they were thinking. Or they saw something happen on the TV or they heard a song that pretty much echoed what they were thinking. That's not a coincidence, right? Like, we're learning more about how, as Dr. Joe Dispenza likes to talk about, how we are literally electromagnetic beings, right? Everything is energy. That phrase is not empty. We don't just say that for the sake of saying it. Science has proven that everything is energy, right? And including us. And science has proven that we are electromagnetic beings. We are sending out signals and receiving them. That's also how we can hear sound, right? Like, we're sending out signals and we can receive them. And so specifically, Dr. Joe says the thoughts we think send an electrical signal out into the field, or the quantum field. And this is, if you guys read enough about quantum physics, you'll know how that works, or you'll get an idea of it. But he says that thoughts are the electrical signal that we send out, and then feelings that we generate magnetically draws events back to us. So the thoughts are the signal that we send out, and feelings brings the event to us based on what we give our attention to in a persisting kind of way. And so that's what Neville kind of hints at when he says, you're having inner dialogue, you're giving your attention to certain things or certain aspects of people in your life, you're making certain assumptions about them, and you're also carrying on conversations with them throughout the day on different subjects, right? And so as you persist in that, you start to see, again, if your thoughts are signals and your emotions are the energy that draws it back, whatever thoughts you're thinking and however charged with emotion you are, whether it's anger, frustration, disappointment, whatever the case may be, however intense those emotions are, you're drawing experiences to you from like in regards to those people and those circumstances that you are putting your attention on. And so that's just the backstory. You can learn a lot more about this all over the place. I recommend learning from Neville Goddard. You can look up I forget which book it is, but you can look up the topic of inner conversations, because he talks about it a lot in different lectures that he has. And that's the esoteric aspect of it. But you can also look up Dr. Joe Dispenza for the scientific part of it. And but for me, it just all has been validated, because I can recall, having certain thoughts about people and then literally physically seeing them show up in my reality that way, engaging with me in that way, because that's what I expect of them. And that's, I'm constantly thinking a certain nature of things when it relates to them. It's also why, think about having had an argument with somebody. Like, before you even have that argument, you're probably thinking 1,000,001 thoughts. You're probably cussing that person out in your head. You're probably saying, you MFer, and, how dare you, and in your mind, right? All of this is happening first in your mind, because Neville says first, we experience everything first in the mind, and then it gets pushed out. And it does so in a natural kind of way that you won't even realize that you probably conceived it before it happened. Right? Like, that's just the natural, logical flow of reality, is that all these things happen in such a natural way that we don't even regard ourselves as powerful as we really are, because we think it just would have happened anyway. That's the folly of humanity, right? But the point that I was making is that, you're having that dialogue, you're probably, saying a bunch of things, and then all of a sudden, when you get in front of that person, your energy is all charged up with this negative emotion, because you're just going to set this person straight, and that comes out, right? And of course, if you're thinking those thoughts about them, if that's the signal, the thought is the signal that you're sending out, and the emotion is charged up, and that's going to draw the experience to you, what kind of energy you think they're going to come back with you? Like, to you with. They're going to come back to you with an energy that matches that energy you sending out. And so it literally is that basic, that when you break it down, is that simple, that this is how, part of the creation process is not just, we can have a dream and imagine it. It's also the day-to-day thoughts and assumptions and emotions that we're signaling into the universe. And if you pay attention and you grow your awareness, you'll start to see evidence more and more of how that is so, and how you help play a role in the things you experience with different people in your life. Really everyone in your life. But some, for people who may be just new to this information, it's kind of hard to swallow the pill that you have an influence on everything and everyone in your reality. And they are literally reflecting back to you whatever that influence is. So I've come to accept that. I hold 100% accountability for my role in the creation process. And I feel like that is actually a healthy stance to have when you are acknowledging that you are not powerless in your reality. You have some will, you have some influence. And I'm using my words very carefully because, I've recently had a conversation with someone who kind of, took it to a level of well, you can't control every single thing. Well, no, you can't control every single thing. You can't control the things that are out, that are, it's hard to talk about this part of it, but you have more influence over the life that you're living than you've probably been aware of. You have more influence. You don't have influence over the mechanisms as to how things happen, but you do have influence over the what, right? I feel like that's where you don't have the influence over the how. You have influence over the what. And sometimes you could have some influence over the how in terms of the tone of things or the ease of things or the flow of things, but not down to the mechanisms or the dots being connected. That is not where your power truly lies. Your power truly lies in the what and how you show up and the thoughts you're signaling and the emotions that you're allowing to be drawing these experiences back to you. So I said a mouthful, but I've literally been working with inner conversations as it relates to people in my reality. And it's just amazing. The more I practice it, the more I'm blown away by how much those inner conversations influence our daily moods, our moment-to-moment moods, and how we feel in our day, how those inner conversations affect how we show up, and how they can either help us soothe ourselves or dysregulate our nervous system, right? And cause all kinds of stress and anxiety and fear. And we just got to be mindful of our thoughts, man. One of the things I'm so grateful about this manifestation journey is that, let me use my terminology. One of the reasons I'm so excited about this intentional creation journey is that it really opens you up to awareness. It really forces you to expand your awareness. You become super aware, self-aware of how you show up and what's going on within you. You get to know yourself truly on the deepest of levels. And like Jesus told us, know thyself. Know thyself. And not just Jesus. All great religions point in the direction of inner knowledge, mastery of self. And this journey, this intentional creation journey, will have you become a master of self. And honestly, that's truly the only thing you ever need to master in this reality is yourself. That's the only thing you need to master. Self-mastery is everything. And so I've been playing around with the inner conversations, and I am literally seeing, first and foremost, how it shifts my feelings moment to moment. As you grow in your awareness, what happens along the intentional creation journey is that you become more aware of the limiting beliefs that you've been carrying, the beliefs that get in the way. And the way that they show up is that they will present themselves in your relationships, in your circumstances. They will present themselves as actual circumstances. And you will then be tested to say, okay, are you going to react in the same way that you've been practicing to react all this time, which you know has not been working for you because you keep getting the same results? Or are you going to meet the moment and change? Right? And this does not mean to ignore what's happening in your reality. It doesn't mean that at all. It just means acknowledge, okay, this circumstance has popped up. I know that on this subject, I have been very fearful about certain things. I have been thinking negative thoughts about it. I have been feeling fear around the subject, or feeling doubtful around the subject. And again, thoughts are signals. Energy, emotion is the energy that draws it back in, the electromagnetic magnet that draws it back in. And so if you've been feeling and thinking those thoughts that are drawing in a negative experience, you got to acknowledge that, hey, I was there. I took myself there, right? I allowed myself to go there because that's what I've been practicing. But now that I'm aware that I don't have to continue to practice that anymore, man, like that is total freedom. It takes effort, right? It takes work to then say, okay, I acknowledge what this is. I know what that fear is. I know why I'm afraid, because I have a core belief that, these things don't usually work out for me. And I have tons of evidence in my experience. Granted, that's what your brain does. Your subconscious is a keeper of information. It's a keeper of memories. And just because it's a keeper of memories, it's going to present things to you that is going to say, okay, you think these negative thoughts and you feel this fear. Let me show you why. Remember this, remember that, remember this, remember that. Like, it's literally going to take you on a journey of that process of like realizing, oh wait, I got all this evidence of why these things, why this must be true. And so what your job is as an intentional creator is to shift your inner dialogue to, after you acknowledge what it is, granted, because you can't suppress your emotions. You can't suppress or ignore the limiting belief. You have to deal with it. And what that means is you acknowledge it. You acknowledge the source of it, the fear. You acknowledge even the evidence. But then you shift and you realize evidence is just evidence of who I used to be. In this moment, I have a newfound awareness. Therefore, I can't get the same results unless I react in the same way. So I don't have to accept that because I have evidence of how it's been, that's permanent. In fact, I can accept that because I have awareness that's expanded, I can change. Don't argue for your limitations, argue for your strengths. So when you argue for your limitations, you'll say, oh, I got all this evidence, it must be true, right? Those are your limitations. That's what kept you stuck. But if you argue for your strengths, you say, well, yeah, I have all the evidence, but that's evidence of the old me, that the me that didn't know any better, the me that wasn't on this journey, the me that didn't want this change as much as I wanted, right? And so I'm going to argue for my strength and say, here's what's possible. And if you're on this journey, you understand that possibilities are infinite. There are infinite possibilities when you're open, but you can't get to those possibilities if you're still stuck in the emotions of the past, because those emotions will block you from seeing possibility. When you show up continuing to repeat the patterns that don't serve you, you cannot see the possibility of potential for a new reality. You cannot see the possibility of potential for a new relationship. You cannot see the possibility of potential for a new job or more money or any of the above, because you are reacting from the same emotions that you practice that has gotten in the way. And that's what I've learned along this journey. And that's what I'm practicing within Inner Conversations, is to shift and see my reality and see the people in it different. Once I acknowledge that whatever limited beliefs may come up, once I acknowledge them for what they are and the source of them, I then argue for my strengths. And I say, well, I am more aware, expanded in my awareness and expanded of my knowledge. Therefore, I don't have to let this pattern that keeps coming up overtake me. I don't have to let it win. I don't have to go there. I can go in another direction. Oh, and what is that other direction? Well, let me have an inner conversation about it. Instead of having certain dialogue with people that are telling the same old story, I shift the dialogue to a new story. I shift the dialogue to things working out. I hear that person tell me, oh, I'm so glad that everything is working out. I'm so glad we're in such a great place now. And I hear them telling me the things, instead of hearing them tell me or replaying scenes in my mind about disappointing news or disappointing behavior. I hear them tell me that things worked out, and I hear them tell me from a place of improved behavior or improved relations, right? And you can learn a lot more about inner conversations, and I'm probably going to do more podcast episodes about it. But this is what I've been practicing, and if not for nothing else, this is a practice that actually helps you feel better in the moment. And one of the things we're learning about thoughts and emotions is that your thoughts and emotions, they flip-flop. Thoughts can influence emotions, but emotions can also influence your thoughts. So if you are thinking from more negatively charged emotions, the lower vibrational emotions, the lower frequency emotions that are on the chart of consciousness, if you look up Dr. David Hawkins, he has this consciousness chart that pretty much has a scale of where different emotions fall on the consciousness scale. When you're thinking of lower conscious emotions, you're less creative, which means you're not really open to seeing possibilities. You're not really open to infinite possibilities. You're very limited in your scope and very limited in your view. So when you're understanding that thoughts and feelings flip-flop, then you can know, okay, if I shift my awareness into more positive thoughts, or even just having this inner dialogue, that's going to shift my emotions, which are then going to shift my thinking to more positive possibilities and potentials, right? Which those thoughts of positive possibilities and potentials are also going to, in turn, influence me to feel even better. And as I'm doing this dance between my thoughts and feelings, like improving my thoughts, which improves my feelings, which improves my thoughts, which improves my feelings, you are on fire, baby. Like, you become a supercharged signaler of what it is you desire, because you're shifting your awareness from inner conversations that don't work, right? That you've been having for years on autopilot before you probably heard this podcast, or before you learned about Neville Goddard, or before you learned about Dr. Joe Dispenza. Like, you've been on autopilot and you didn't know that you could do something about it. And so you are now empowered and you're on fire to be aligning with whatever it is you desire. That is the true power. These tools are just tools to get you in a state of being receptive to all of your desires. They are not the actual magic pill. You are the magic pill. As Neville Goddard would say, you are the operant power. The power is never outside of you. The tools you use just help you get to your power. It's like a superhero, like the cape or the costume that the superhero wears. That's not what makes the superhero powerful, but it's the tools that sometimes get him into that mode, get that superhero into the superpower mode, right? So like, I'm trying to think of which superhero has to take. I remember it was a superhero that had to take some kind of potion every time they transformed, right? But that was the tool that got them there. But the real power was within them. I don't know which superhero it was, but I think you guys get the analogy I'm drawing from this. But I'm going to continue along my journey to persist in using this particular tool. I use a number of tools. I really have, like I said, narrowed things down to just like occasional journaling, meditation, and maybe one or two tools in terms of like my mental, right? And so for my mental, this inner conversation tool, as of the past 48 hours, has been very potent and powerful. And I'm just sharing with you guys because maybe it's something you might want to tap into, you might want to look into and learn about. If you do, don't be shy. Let me know how it goes. Drop some comments on the podcast, or check me out on YouTube, because I typically upload each episode onto YouTube. I want to hear from you guys. And also, for the remaining of the year, if you're listening to this while it's still 2022, my course is going to be $222 for a limited time. I said until the end of the year, but we'll see. But I really fell in love with the number 222 for various reasons. And tap in, y'all. Thanks for tuning in. And until next time, toodles.